My sister made me spend $2,200 and accused me of abandoning her. But when I investigated her past, I uncovered years of scams. She got arrested for fraud, and my parents demanded I pay her $5,000 bail. I left them all facing the consequences. I'm 29 years old. I work in logistics for a distribution company. And honestly, I need to tell this story because what happened with my sister Natasha basically blew up my entire relationship with my family, and I still don't know if I did right or wrong. But it is what it is. The thing is, I was always the responsible older brother, the one who did things right, got good grades, got stable jobs, and Natasha was like the family baby, the spoiled one, the one who could do whatever she wanted, and my parents, Elizabeth and Gregory, always found a way to justify her. We grew up in a house where the rules were very different for each of us. I mean, I had a curfew at 10 at night when I was 17, and Natasha would come home at 3 in the morning at 16, and my parents would say it was different because she was more social or whatever excuse they'd invent that day. I worked since I was 15, first at a supermarket and then at a gas station. I paid for my own car, my own, college books, everything, while Natasha got bought whatever she asked for, and when she finished high school, she didn't even try to go to college. She just said she needed time to find herself, and my parents said that was fine, that everyone has their own path. Fast forward like 5 years, I was already living alone, had my apartment, my stable job, visited my parents on Sundays because, well, family, and Natasha was still living with them without paying rent, without having a job, basically having a good time, while my parents paid for everything. I tried not to get involved, honestly, because every time I suggested that maybe Natasha should look for a job or do something productive, my parents would tell me to stop being so hard on her, that not everyone is the same, that she was going through a difficult time, even though that difficult time had been going on for years. Then one day, like a year and a half ago, Natasha called me crying, like really distressed, saying she needed to talk to me urgently. I went to a cafe near my parents' house and she arrived with red eyes, saying she couldn't take it anymore, that living with our parents was suffocating her, that Elizabeth and Gregory were too controlling, that they wouldn't let her breathe, that she needed her own space to really be able to focus on her life and get a job. She told me, "Nicholas, I need your help. You're the only one who understands me, the only one who really cares about me. Mom and Dad just want to control me. But if I had my own place, I could prove to them that I'm capable." And look, I'm aware that I was an idiot, but in that moment I really believed that maybe this was what Natasha needed. A push, an opportunity to prove she could be independent. I told her okay, that I would help her but with conditions, that I would pay the first month's rent and the deposit, that I would buy her the basic furniture, but that after that she had to look for a job and support herself, that this was to help her get started but not to support her indefinitely. Natasha hugged me crying, saying yes, of course, that she just needed this opportunity and that she was going to prove to everyone that she could do it. We found a small apartment, nothing fancy but decent, like 20 minutes from where my parents lived. I paid her the first month, which was like $650 plus $650 deposit. I went with her to buy a used bed but in good condition, a second-hand sofa, dishes, sheets, all the basics, and I ended up spending like $2,200 total, which for me was a lot of money because it's not like I was making a fortune either, but I thought it was an investment in my sister's future. You know what I mean? The first few days, Natasha was super excited. She was posting photos on Instagram of her new place, telling everyone that she was finally independent, that she was starting her new life. I would visit her like once a week to see how she was doing. I would bring her food sometimes, and I'd ask her how the job search was going. She always had excuses, that she had applied to several places but they hadn't called her, that she was waiting to hear back from an interview, that such and such company she felt didn't pay well, so she was better off keep looking. The first month passed, then the second, and Natasha still had no job. I was paying her rent because, well, I wasn't going to let her get evicted, but I told her this couldn't continue like this, that she needed to get serious. She would tell me, yes, that she understood, that she almost had something for sure, and I believed her because I wanted to believe her, I guess. The third month, I noticed that Natasha was going out a lot, posting Instagram stories at bars, at restaurants, with friends, and when I'd ask her, she'd say her friends invited her, that she wasn't spending money, that she was just trying not to get depressed while looking for work. We got to the fourth month, and my car broke down. I needed like $800 in repairs because the engine had a serious problem, and it was my only means of transportation to get to work. I mean, fixing it wasn't optional. I told Natasha that that month I wasn't going to be able to pay her rent, that I was sorry but I had an emergency, that she had to talk to the landlord and explain the situation, maybe get an extension or something. I called her on a Tuesday afternoon to tell her this, and she basically went hysterical. She yelled at me that how could I do this to her, that she depended on me, that I had promised to help her, that thanks to me she had left our parents' house and now I was going to leave her on the street. I tried to explain to her that it wasn't that I was abandoning her, that it was just 1 month, that she had had 4 months to look for a job, but she didn't want to listen. She told me I was a horrible brother, that I had always been selfish, that I only thought about myself, and she hung up on me. I tried to call her back, but she sent me straight to voicemail. I sent her messages and she left me on read. Basically, she ghosted me completely. Like 2 weeks went by without hearing anything from Natasha. I was worried but also angry because, seriously? This was her reaction after I had helped her so much? My parents hadn't called me either, so I assumed Natasha hadn't told them anything. Or maybe she did have some shame. But then on a Sunday night, like at 9, my phone rings and it's my mom, Elizabeth, and from the tone of her voice I knew it was going to be bad. Mom starts yelling at me, telling me, how dare I do that to my sister? That Natasha was devastated, that I had forced her to leave the house, that I had promised to support her, and now I had abandoned her without warning, that she was about to be on the street because of me. And I tried to explain to her what really happened, but Elizabeth wouldn't even let me talk. She just kept yelling, saying that I had always been hard on Natasha, that I was jealous of her, that I couldn't stand to see her happy. Then my dad Gregory got on the phone, and it was basically the same thing, that I was a terrible brother, that family is supposed to help each other, that they had raised me better than that. I told them that Natasha had lied to them, that I had helped her for 4 months, paying for everything, that just 1 month I couldn't because my car had broken down, that she had had all that time to look for work and hadn't done it. Gregory told me that Natasha had told them that, yes, she had been looking for work, but that I had told her I wasn't going to pay anymore because I considered I had done enough, that I had given her an ultimatum that either she got a job in 2 weeks or she'd have to manage on her own. Basically, Natasha had told them a completely different story, where I was the villain who had forced her out of their house and then abandoned her to her fate. I tried to show them proof. I told them to check the PLAS, messages I had sent Natasha, the bank transfers from the 4 months. But my mom said she didn't need to see anything, that she believed her daughter, that Natasha had no reason to lie. That call ended with me yelling at my parents that they were blind, that Natasha manipulated them and they let her. And Gregory told me not to come back to his house until I apologized to Natasha and fixed the mess I had caused. I hung up the phone and literally sat on my couch for like half an hour, unable to process what had just happened. The next day I tried to call Natasha like 20 times. I sent her messages telling her we needed to talk, that what she had told our parents was a lie, and she knew it. Finally, she answered me with a super cold message saying she had nothing to talk to me about, that I knew what I had done, that thanks to me she had to go back to our parents humiliated, and now they wouldn't stop telling her I told you so. I called her immediately, and this time she did answer. And when I told her why had she lied to our parents, she told me she hadn't lied, that I was the liar, that she had been looking for work but it was difficult, that I had pressured her too much, and that's why she got so stressed she couldn't find anything. I told her that was a complete lie, that I had proof of everything, and she told me, "Oh yeah, what proof? The money transfers? That only proves you were paying my rent. It doesn't prove anything else. And besides, you didn't even ask me if I could really afford to look for work being so stressed about living alone." Basically, she was blaming me for her not having looked for work, saying that I didn't understand the pressure she had felt, that it had been too much for her. When I told her this was ridiculous, that she had begged me to help her, she told me that yes, but that I had promised her I was going to support her until she was stable. Not just 4 months, That wasn't enough time. The conversation went in circles. Her, deflecting everything, victimizing herself, and me getting more and more furious because I couldn't believe this was my sister, the person I had tried to help. In the end, I told her she was crazy, that I wasn't going to continue with this conversation, and she told me that was perfect, that anyway she didn't want to hear from me anymore, that I had proven I only cared about myself. I hung up feeling like I had been kicked in the stomach. Literally, I couldn't breathe well from the rage and frustration. My parents kept calling me during the following weeks, basically harassing me to apologize to Natasha, to fix things. I sent them screenshots of my conversations with Natasha, the bank transfers, everything. But Elizabeth told me that didn't change anything, that I had still been insensitive with my sister, that I should have been more patient. Gregory told me it didn't matter who was right, that at the end of the day Natasha was my younger sister, and it was my responsibility to take care of her. I told them no, that I wasn't going to be part of this anymore, that if they wanted to keep believing Natasha over me, then that was their decision, but not to expect me to stay quiet. I stopped talking to my family for like 2 months. It was horrible because I had never been distant from them like that, but I also wasn't going to apologize for something I hadn't done wrong. Then Elizabeth called me saying we needed to have a family meeting to resolve this once and for all, that this couldn't continue like this, that we were family and families solve their problems. I really didn't want to go, but my cousin Diana, who was like my best friend, convinced me to go, that maybe if we all sat down together and talked calmly, things could be clarified. The meeting was at my parents' house on a Saturday afternoon. I arrived and Natasha was already there sitting on the couch with a victim face. My parents were serious but trying to maintain a neutral tone. We started and basically, Gregory said that we all needed to express how we felt without judging, that this was a safe space. Natasha started by saying she felt betrayed by me, that I had promised to help her and then left her stranded. That thanks to me now she had to live with our parents again and felt like a failure. I interrupted her and told her that was a lie, that I never promised to support her indefinitely, that we had agreed I would help her get started but that she had to look for work. I took out my phone and showed them the bank transfers, 4 months of $650 each. I showed them the receipts for the furniture. I showed them the messages where I told Natasha she needed to look for work. Elizabeth looked at them and said, "Okay, so you did help her, but that doesn't change that you left her without warning when she needed you most." I explained about my car. I showed them the mechanic's bill. I told them it wasn't that I didn't want to help her, but that I literally couldn't that month, because I had an emergency. Gregory said that. Then I should have found another way. That I should have gotten a loan or something. That you don't abandon family like that. Natasha was sitting there with her arms crossed, not saying anything, and I asked her directly, "Did you tell Mom and Dad that I forced you out of this house?" She looked at me and said, "I never said that exactly. I said you had offered me help and I accepted it." I told her, "No. You called me crying, telling me you needed to get out, that Mom and Dad were too controlling. I have the messages." She shrugged and said, "Well, maybe we remember it differently. Maybe I was very stressed and didn't express myself well." It was incredible, the way she could lie so calmly, as if she really believed her own version of the story. I asked her, "And what about you saying, I gave you a 2-week ultimatum to look for work?" She said, "You were always pressuring me about work. All the time you were asking me if I had found something. That feels like an ultimatum." I showed her the messages where I asked her casually, like once a week, if there was progress, nothing aggressive or pressuring, and she said that for her that was pressure, that I didn't understand how she felt. My parents were looking at her with compassion, like saying, "Poor Natasha, so sensitive," and I just wanted to get out of there. The meeting ended without resolving anything. Basically, my parents said we both had valid perspectives, that I should have been more understanding of Natasha's situation, and she should have communicated her needs better. They asked me to apologize to her for not being more patient, and I said no, that I wasn't going to apologize for something I didn't do wrong, that if they couldn't see that Natasha was manipulating them, then there was nothing more to talk about. Elizabeth started crying, saying I was destroying the family, and I left, feeling worse than when I had arrived. Like a week after that meeting, my phone rings and it's a number I don't recognize. I answer, and it's Natasha's landlord. He asks me if I'm Nicholas, and I say, yes. Then he tells me that Natasha abandoned the apartment like 3 weeks ago without notice, that she left damage on the walls and a bunch of furniture is missing, that he's trying to contact her but she doesn't answer. I tell him to wait. That Natasha told me she had gone back to live with our parents like 2 months ago, and he tells me no, that she kept living there until 3 weeks ago, and then simply left, leaving everything a mess. I ask him what kind of damage, and he tells me there are holes in the walls, stains on the carpets, and that the furniture I had bought, like the bed and sofa, are no longer there. I freeze because, first, why was Natasha still in that apartment if supposedly she had gone back with my parents? And second, where was the furniture? The landlord tells me that technically the contract is in Natasha's name, but I signed as guarantor when I helped her get the place, so if she doesn't pay for the damages, he can sue me too. I panic and tell him I'm going to try to contact Natasha. I hang up and call her immediately, but obviously she sends me to voicemail. I send her like 10 messages telling her I need to talk to her urgently, that the landlord called me, what's going on? Natasha doesn't answer me, so I call my parents and ask them if she's there. Elizabeth tells me, yes, that Natasha has been living with them since she left the apartment. I tell her, Mom, Natasha never went back to live with you after I stopped paying her rent. She stayed in that apartment until 3 weeks ago. The landlord just called me. Elizabeth is quiet for a moment and then says, no, that can't be true. Natasha has been here all this time. I tell her to ask Natasha where she was really living, and I hear my mom walk away from the phone and talk to someone in the background. Then she comes back and tells me, Natasha says she doesn't know what you're talking about, that you're making things up to make her look bad. I tell her the landlord literally called me, that I can give them his number to verify it. And Gregory gets on the phone and tells me to stop harassing Natasha, that I've done enough damage, that he doesn't understand why I keep trying to create problems. I tell him to call the landlord themselves if they don't believe me. I give them the number, and Gregory tells me they're going to do it, but if this is another one of my lies, he's not going to forgive me. I hang up and sit on my bed with my head in my hands because I don't know what to do anymore. All of this is too much. The next day, my cousin Diana sends me a message with a bunch of screenshots. She tells me, I was stalking Natasha's Instagram because something didn't add up. And look at this. The screenshots are from Natasha's stories and posts from recent weeks. There are photos of her at expensive restaurants, on a beach trip with some friends, buying clothes at brand name stores, literally like she had money to burn. Diana tells me, if supposedly she was so broke financially that she had to go back with your parents, where did the money for all this come from? I start reviewing Natasha's entire profile, and it's true. There's evidence of a lifestyle that definitely isn't of someone without a job and without money. There are photos at bars, at concerts, with new clothes. A photo of her with a purse that I know costs like $400 because my ex-girlfriend had one just like it. I take screenshots of everything and send them to my parents with a message saying, explain this to me. If Natasha was so desperate financially, how could she pay for all this? My mom calls me like half an hour later. Her voice sounds different, less certain. She tells me, I talked to Natasha about the photos and she says her friends paid for everything, that she didn't spend anything. I tell her, Mom, that doesn't make sense. Her friends bought her clothes and a $400 purse? Elizabeth says she doesn't know. That Natasha has generous friends. That maybe they're trying to help her because they know she's going through a difficult time. I ask her if they called the landlord and there's a long silence. Then she tells me yes, that they called him and he told them the same thing he told me, that Natasha left the apartment 3 weeks ago with damage. I ask her, and what did Natasha tell you about that? Elizabeth says Natasha insists that's not true, that the landlord is lying, that maybe he's confusing her with another tenant. I tell her that's impossible, that the landlord called me specifically, used my name, and my mom just says, I don't know, Nicholas. This is very confusing. I need time to process it. I feel like a small ray of hope that maybe finally my parents are starting to see the truth. Then, like 2 days later, I receive a message from an unknown number. It's a guy who introduces himself as Zachary. He says he's Natasha's ex-boyfriend and that my cousin Diana gave him my number. He tells me he heard I'm having problems with Natasha and wants to talk to me, that he went through something similar. I agree to meet him at a cafe, and when he arrives, he tells me a whole story. He says he dated Natasha like 2 years ago. That at first she was incredible, but then she started asking him for money constantly, always with excuses of emergencies, that her car had broken down, that she needed to pay for something urgent. Zachary tells me he lent her like $3,000 total over several months, that Natasha always promised to pay him back, but never did. When he finally asked her to pay him or at least to talk about a payment plan, she went hysterical, told him he was insensitive. How could he be charging her when she was going through so much? That if he really loved her, he wouldn't care about the money. Zachary says that when he finally broke up with her, Natasha told all their friends and family that he had used and mistreated her, that he was an abuser, basically destroyed his reputation. He tells me it took him months to clear his name, and there are still people who believe Natasha's version. I ask him why he's telling me this, and he tells me because when Diana told him what was happening, he knew Natasha was doing exactly the same thing to me. That's her pattern. Manipulating people who love her, playing the victim, and then disappearing when they confront her. He tells me there are more people who have similar stories with Natasha, that she basically has burned bridges with a bunch of people. I thank him for telling me and ask him if he can send me something in writing about what he told me, because I need evidence. He agrees and sends me a long message detailing his entire experience with Natasha. Diana connects me with another person, a girl named Courtney, who was Natasha's roommate like 3 years ago. Courtney tells me that Natasha lived with her for like 6 months, and at first everything was fine, but then she started not paying her part of the rent, saying she was waiting for payment from a job, that she just needed a couple of weeks. Those weeks turned into months, and Courtney ended up paying almost all the rent alone. Also, Natasha borrowed $800 from her, saying it was a family emergency, promised to pay her back in 2 weeks, and never did. When Courtney confronted her, Natasha left the apartment without warning, leaving her with the lease contract, and ghosted her completely, blocked her number and her social media. All this information keeps arriving like in pieces, and I'm putting together the puzzle that basically Natasha has been doing this for years. Moving from person to person, asking them for money or help, emotionally manipulating them, and then disappearing when they confront her or when she can't get more out of them. I feel sick to my stomach because I realize that I was just one more in a long list of people she used. I send all this information to my parents, all the testimonies, all the evidence. And this time, Elizabeth doesn't have much to say. She just responds that she's going to talk to Natasha. Like a week later, Diana calls me and tells me she found more things. That apparently Natasha has been involved with a girl named Serena, who is into something that sounds like an MLM or some kind of pyramid scheme. That Natasha has been trying to recruit people for this thing, promising them they're going to make a lot of money. Diana sends me screenshots of conversations where Natasha is trying to sell people a product or service that is clearly a scam. She also found that Natasha has been selling things on Facebook Marketplace. A lot of things, including furniture that looks suspiciously like the ones I bought her for her apartment. I confront my parents with this, and Gregory finally explodes. Tells me that's enough. That I'm obsessed with destroying Natasha. That he doesn't understand why I have so much hate for my own sister. I tell him it's not hate, it's the truth. That Natasha is a liar and manipulator, and if they can't see it, then I don't know what else to do. Elizabeth is crying and saying she can't believe her children are like this, that this is destroying the family. I tell them that I'm not destroying anything, that Natasha destroyed everything with her lies, and if they prefer to believe her over the mountain of evidence I've given them, then that's their choice. But I'm not going to keep participating in this. Like 2 more months went by without talking to anyone in my family except Diana. It was a weird period, because on one hand I felt bad about the distance, but on the other hand, I felt so relieved not to have to deal with the constant drama. I focused on my work, on my friends, on my life, and honestly, I was starting to feel better. Then one day my phone rings, and it's Natasha, which is super weird because she had completely ghosted me for months. I answer without thinking, and she's there with her sweetest voice, saying, "Hi Nicholas, how are you?" I stay quiet for like 5 seconds because I can't process what's happening, and she keeps talking like nothing had happened, saying she misses me, that she's been thinking about me, that she realizes things got out of control but we're family and family forgives. I ask her, "Are you serious right now?" and she tells me, I know you're angry, but I think we both said things we shouldn't have. I was under a lot of stress and maybe I reacted badly, but we can get over it, right? I tell her she didn't react badly, that she literally lied to me and our parents, that she made me look like the villain, that she used my money and then disappeared. Natasha sighs and tells me, Look, Nicholas, you've always been dramatic about everything. I didn't lie to you. We just had different perspectives of the situation. And about the money. Well, I'm going to pay you back when I can. But you can't pressure me like that. I tell her I don't want her money, that I just wanted her to admit the truth, and she tells me, What truth? Your truth isn't the only truth. I start to get angry and ask her why she's really calling me. And there's a silence, and then she tells me she needs a favor, that she's in a complicated situation and needs to borrow money, like $1,000, that she's going to pay me back in 2 months. I start to laugh. Literally, I can't help it. And I tell her, Are you kidding me? After everything that happened, you're asking me for money? She gets offended and tells me I don't have to be so rude, that she would never ask me if it wasn't really important, that I'm being a bad brother. I tell her no, that I'm not going to give her a single penny, that she needs to stop asking people for money and get a real job. She starts yelling at me, saying I'm selfish, that I've always been selfish, that I've never understood what she's been through, and I hang up the phone feeling completely exhausted. Like 3 days later, my mom calls me and her voice sounds completely different. She's crying and can barely talk. She tells me Natasha was arrested, that she's in jail, that I need to come urgently. I ask her what happened, and Elizabeth tells me that Natasha stole several $1,000s from some friends, that she had been scamming people with that pyramid scheme Diana had found, that one of the victims reported her to the police, and when they investigated, they found a bunch of evidence of fraud. She tells me they need money to get her out on bail, that the bail is like $5,000 and they don't have all of that, asking if I can help. I tell her no, that I'm definitely not going to help, that Natasha needs to face the consequences of her actions for once in her life. My mom starts yelling at me, saying, How can I be so cruel? That Natasha is my sister, that she's in danger in jail. I tell her that Natasha put herself in that situation, that I tried to help her and she used me and lied to me, that all the people who tried to warn them were ignored, and that maybe this is what she needs to finally change. Elizabeth tells me she's never going to forgive me if I don't help Natasha. What kind of brother am I? I respond that I'm the kind of brother who got tired of being manipulated, who got tired of being the villain in the story Natasha invents, who got tired of my own parents treating me like I'm the problem when I've been trying to tell them the truth from the beginning. I tell her that if they want to get Natasha out, they can do it themselves, but not to count on me, and that honestly, I think the best thing they can do is leave her there until she has her hearing, that maybe a little time in jail is going to give her perspective. My mom tells me I'm a monster and hangs up on me. I haven't talked to my parents since that call. It's been like 3 months since then. Diana keeps me updated from time to time. She tells me my parents managed to scrape together the bail money and got Natasha out, that she's waiting for trial, that apparently there are like 7 people who are pressing charges against her for different amounts of money she owes them or stole from them. Natasha apparently is still insisting she's innocent, that people are misunderstanding her, that it's all a misunderstanding. The truth is, I feel relieved to have distance from all this. For the first time in a long time, I don't have the weight of worrying about Natasha or what my parents think of me. Diana tells me that maybe with time my parents will see the full truth, but honestly, I don't care anymore if they do or not. I did what I could. I tried to help my sister. I tried to be honest with my parents, and in the end, they made me the villain anyway. I guess some people need to really hit rock bottom before they change, and maybe Natasha is never going to change. I don't know. What I do know is, it's not my problem anymore. And that feels good, even though it also feels sad because at the end of the day it's still my family. But I can't keep burning myself trying to keep someone warm who doesn't even appreciate the fire.